The private screening room, he swore, was fully booked. The calendar square arrived at 6:07 p.m., neat as a pressed cuff. Festival closing, after party late. 2 minutes later, Theo texted, "Don't wait up. Sponsors want a quick meet and greet in the screening wing. Proud of me." Read he uses the heart when the rest of the sentence is trying to be its own alibi. I turned the flame under the pasta to the kind of simmer that calls itself maturity and looked out at the river, where the film center's glass ribs were already rehearsing reflections. The square on my phone pulsed once, and then did its job of pretending not to be a prediction. I rinsed an already clean spoon, because some nights the only honest activity is useless. At 6:31 my phone vibrated with a number I didn't recognize and a message that recognized me anyway. If sponsors are in the main theater, why did he just badge the private screening room? Side stare by the archival stacks. The usher owes me a favor. It was signed with a single letter, R, as if the alphabet had been slipped under a door. Ronnie runs projection with a precision that makes light seem obedient. He and Theo orbit the same donors and disagree about lenses without making it a metaphor. He and I have shared 2 cigarettes on the loading dock, and a laugh we both pretended not to remember. We have not touched, which is sometimes the loudest decision a room can witness. "Why tell me?" I wrote. "Because your calendar is polite and my badge logs aren't," he sent back. Because he looked up before he swiped. People only look up in that corridor when they want oxygen. Because the private room is for dailies and damage control, not charm. The side stare smelled like old velvet and expensive dust. Festival posters from 10 different decades stared down with the kind of dated confidence only history can afford. At the landing, a narrow hallway led toward the archival stacks. Beyond them, a door with a brass plaque read "Private Screening" in a font that thought it was more discreet than it was. A red light above the frame glowed as if it had been paid to be coy. The handle wanted a card, and believed the one Ronnie had made me memorize belonged to me. Inside, the room had the hush of money that prefers to be forgiven rather than seen. 16 seats in 2 gentle rows, walls upholstered in charcoal, a ceiling that swallowed mistakes. The projector's window cut a small, rectangular confession into the back wall. Theo stood near the front with his jacket off, his shirt open, one button past credible, hands in his pockets like he wished to appear unarmed. Opposite him, 2 fingers resting on the back of a seat with practiced ownership, was Julian Markham, sponsor, collector of reputations, a rumor that carried its own lighting crew. Julian's hand hovered near Theo's wrist without landing because proximity photographs better than contact when your brand likes plausible deniability. "Fully booked looks quiet," I said from the aisle. My voice behaved, my ribs did not. Theo turned. For a beat the truth used his face like a window someone hadn't cleaned because they loved the view too much. Then he remembered the audience. "Miles," he said. How did?" "Ronnie likes nouns," I said. "I like doors." Julian's smile wore generosity like cologne. "We were reviewing footage," he said. "Intimacy suits a certain cut." "I prefer editors with witnesses," I said. Theo took a step toward me and let the carpet steal the second one. "We were talking about next year's slate," he said. "He wants to position the lab program as brave." "Brave is cheaper than honest," I said. "Honest is what rooms do when you don't touch anything." Julian lifted his palms in the language of men who can afford not to lose. "2 minutes," he said. "The projector can keep a secret. I prefer not to." He drifted a few seats back, sat with his ankles crossed, and looked at the blank screen as if it owed him a confession. Theo watched me the way men watch rain arrive after a month of polite weather. "I was going to text you," he said, lower now, the register he keeps for mourning and for the softness under my jaw. "After. I wanted to prove I could leave this room without being corrected by it." "You wanted to be caught," I said. "Not punished, caught." He laughed once, quiet and surrendering. "Yes." There is a temperature at which grammar steps back and lets bodies audition for accuracy. I closed the aisle's small distance and put my mouth on his because the screen was blank and deserved a story that did not require a soundtrack. He kissed back with the relief of an actor who has just been told he can improvise. He tasted like festival wine and the stubborn hope of men who keep believing in second acts. My thumb found the hinge of his jaw and pressed. He made the small, involuntary sound I keep receipts for. His palm slid under my shirt and flattened between my shoulder blades like a promise without invoice. We did not undress. The room had too many shadows and not enough forgiveness. He pulled away first, because he knows the moment when heat turns into footage. He rested his forehead against mine and let breath do the heavy lifting. "I didn't kiss him," he said. "I wanted to want to. I texted Ronnie instead." "You did," I said. "He prefers oxygen to gossip." From the back row, Julian's reflection in the screen changed its mind about something and then didn't correct us. He stayed seated, benevolent to a fault. The booth window above him went from dark to a low glow. Ronnie tapped the glass twice with the edge of a key, a small metronome of mercy. "Come home," Theo said. "After I thank the man with light," I said. Ronnie waited outside the booth door with a lanyard wound around 2 fingers and the expression of someone the machines trust. "You have 60 seconds before the house sweep wanders into the wrong corridor," he said, not unkind. "Leave by the balcony stair." "You sent the message," I said. "I opened a door," he said. "You two decided to use it." We took the balcony stair because lobbies gossip. The festival's public roar felt like a different language. Outside, the night had dressed for the closing party and forgotten how to care. We walked home along the river without inventing a speech. The pasta forgave me for being late to my responsibilities. We ate standing up like mammals who can live without ceremony. He told me Julian had been sculpting a compliment into a proposition for 3 weeks, and he had helped because selection feels like love when usefulness is the only currency you've learned. I told him Ronnie had texted because some people prefer air to salvage. He didn't ask whether Ronnie and I had ever majorly disappointed a chair together. I didn't volunteer the exact way projection light looks when it leaks around a door frame and introduces your shadow to a decision. Later in the dark, we left a sliver of cool between us and then let it surrender because restraint is only elegant if it chooses not to be permanent. He kissed me with the steadiness I've come to recognize as his answer to every room that thinks it knows what he's worth. I put my mouth where his jaw loses confidence and told it a morning. It was heat without theater. The building minded its radiators. The city rehearsed other people's mythologies at a safe distance. He fell asleep with his hand on my wrist, not as claim and not as proof, just counting the thing we are trying to keep. Morning arranged itself without complaint. Coffee found cups. Emails took numbers and waited their turn. The calendar square for tonight remained blank, which in this city might be the kinkiest thing you can do to time. He tied a tie over a throat I've learned to defend, kissed me like the door already knew our names, and went to tell a festival how to end without lying to itself. At 9:19, a text arrived from a number saved as 1 letter. No footage left the private room. I made the server loop a training reel for 20 minutes. Consider it film school. I sent, "You're very proud of your curriculum." He replied, "I'm proud of your exit." no punctuation correct. By noon, an industry newsletter posted a photo of Julian holding a flute of something expensive with a caption about stewardship and daring. I scrolled past. It wasn't our room. At 1:03, Theo sent me a picture of our kitchen table with the plant we keep almost killing basking in a reasonable square of sun. Room exists, he wrote. I believed him because the glass wore my fingerprints, and because somewhere a projectionist with a moral imagination was teaching a junior usher how to tell the difference between a rehearsal and a mistake. That evening we burned dinner and ate it anyway. When he kissed me at the bedroom door, the kiss declined to be a receipt or an apology. It was a decision with heat in it. We left the calendar empty on purpose and let the house remember how to be a theater for exactly 2. 3 nights later, an anonymous account posted a grainy still of 2 silhouettes near the front row of a small screening room. The comments invented an affair, a betrayal, a power imbalance, a syllabus, and 2 sequels. The internet is fond of craft services it doesn't have to pay for. I put my phone down because none of those silhouettes had my pulse. Theo forwarded me a different image instead. The blank screen from that same room, somebody's coat forgotten on the armrest, the exit sign performing its small red honesty. Our version is quieter, he wrote. Weeks layered themselves the way cities require. Julian sent a revised proposal with fewer adjectives and more commas. Theo returned it with corrections that used both. Ronnie began letting his hair grow in defiance of schedules and pretended not to. And when I asked him in a message whether the projectors cared, he sent back a photo of a lens so clean it looked like a dare. He does not flirt in the language people expect. He simply refuses to lie in rooms that cannot permit it. At a fundraiser, someone told me, with the tight grin of men who think they have learned a trick, that Theo is charming and uncommonly competent, and would never be where he is without certain patrons taking certain interest. I smiled the way men do when they know the trick and have decided to be unbothered by it. That night, we walked home the long way. Theo told me the cymbal crash at the end of a piece always makes him want to apologize to someone. I said we could apologize to the plant for forgetting to water it and call that a liturgy. Another weekend, the film center hosted an open house, honest tickets and real popcorn. We went together and sat in the back row of a public screening like decent civilians, while a short film about an old street performer reminded the room what craft looks like when nobody is paying attention. Afterward, Julian shook Theo's hand and told him the lab would be funded at the level it deserves, and then turned to me and said, with courtesy that failed to be condescension, that the city is kinder to the brave than to the honest, but that he hoped we would try to be both. I told him bravery can be rehearsed, and honesty can only be returned to. He laughed the way men laugh when they recognize a line they wish they had written. We went home and repotted the plant instead of making an occasion of the money. The pot was a little too small for the root ball. We decided that was a lesson the plant would teach us in 6 months. He washed his hands at the sink and watched the dirt whirl away as if it had somewhere important to be. He didn't kiss me then. He toweled off, bumped my hip with his, and went to add a quiet square to the calendar that said nothing more than dinner at home. One wet Thursday, Ronnie texted again, "Booth is yours if you need a seat that doesn't perform." We took the invitation without bringing drama to it. He showed us how the light path works, from lamp to mirror to gate to lens to the patience of a screen, and then left us with 2 paper cups of tea and a view of people practicing attention. Theo held my wrist as if we were counting frames together. The house lights came up and the crowd applauded itself for being awake. We left by the balcony stair, not because anyone would have minded the lobby, but because some doors have earned the right to see what they have saved. It keeps not being simple. The city has a talent for rustling programs into the hand you meant to keep empty. Yet the room exists. In the morning, the calendar often stays blank long enough to make the kettle sing. In the afternoons, Theo sends me photos of the table with its ridiculous plant inventing a new shade of glossy. In the evenings, I answer the doorbell instead of the phone, because doors have better stories, and because somewhere Ronnie is teaching a new kid why loops matter and how not to be careless with them. Sometimes, walking back from the river, Theo takes my wrist lightly and says nothing, which is how I know he remembers the private room and the 2 minutes that were enough. Sometimes I think about Julian paused in the dark like a man watching a film he cannot buy, and I understand that the only legacy I want is a list of exits we used correctly and a handful of rooms that forgave us for arriving. Tonight's square is blank again. We are leaving it that way. The city can keep its premieres. We have the balcony stare, a plant that refuses to die, and the quiet grammar of a decision that knows where it belongs. Not in the footage, not in the rumor, but in the seat you return to because it learned your shape and decided to keep it.